Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's the Zach Bryan self-titled album bomb week, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. You know, it would be just my luck to get sick coming out of a long weekend into what could be easily the biggest month of the year in my IRL job, my channels, and my personal life. So please excuse me if this episode's a little rough around the edges, which is kind of a shame because this week is indicative of that paradigm shift I've been referencing the past couple of weeks around country, and perhaps the most blazing example of what could be a very real trend, especially in 2023. So let's get right to it. In our top 10, and the new number 1 that was surprisingly easy to predict, I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan featuring Kacey Musgraves. And you know, it feels historic. Not just in how I'm a big fan of both acts, and I have been for years, and to see this happen feels damn near unprecedented, but also in the context of what this represents and means. Two acts representing a sound in country that Nashville has been very slow to support, or in the case of Kacey Musgraves, outright rejected, getting the crossover success in a way that both have richly deserved for years, if not a decade. For context, Kacey Musgraves' Follow Your Arrow, it peaked at number 60 10 years ago. That was her biggest hit otherwise. And now the two together, they debut at number 1. Now I feel obligated to mention that this will not stay at number 1. It only has big sales thanks to well-timed discounts and monumental streaming. It's gonna fall back. And sadly, Fast Car by Luke Combs is not gonna be what replaces it. It's got strength in every channel, especially on the radio, but you can argue it has peaked. It's probably out of momentum. And that means what's likely to hit number 1 next week is at number 3 right now. Paint the Town Red by Doja Cat. I mean, the streaming's ridiculously strong, the sales are up, radio supports it. I think it's going to be on the margins, but I also think she's got the edge. This leaves Last Night by Morgan Wallen clearly on the way out at number 4. It's getting beaten on streams and dropped fast on the radio, that's going to do it. And Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift at number 5. The radio is stable, but again, that streaming margin is just not there. Now all this places Rich Men North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony down off the top to number 6, and doesn't surprise me. He still has a lot of streaming and sales, it's just taking a backseat because radio is not really moving on it, and the novelty is fading. But then we got another new arrival to the top 10, Snooze by SZA at number 7, pretty much on the basis of strong radio and streaming just starting to get a little bit more traction. Then we got another new entry at number 8, Used to Be Young by Miley Cyrus. I mean, we're going to get to the track more later on, but this is set up to be a hit, especially with traction in every channel to start, including the radio. And that leaves Dance the Night by Dua Lipa at number 9, thank consistent radio stability for that one, and Fuck You Mean by Gunna sliding to number 10, mostly because radio gains cannot compensate fast enough for its now expected streaming losses. Speaking of which are losers and dropouts, and we got some big ones in the latter category, as to be expected when an album bomb of Zach Bryan's size deals this much damage, and I mean it's a lot. For songs that clinched the year-end list, Favorite Song by Tusi, E La Bella Sola by Eslabon Armado and Pesa Pluma, Next Thing You Know by Jordan Davis, Search and Rescue by Drake, La Bebe by Young Lucas and Pesa Pluma, they all clinched their spots for 2023, but then all the songs knocked off well short, like Baby Don't Hurt Me by David Guetta, Anne-Marie and Coi Leray, or I Can See You by Taylor Swift, or You, Me and Whiskey by Justin Moore and Priscilla Block, or Fight the Feeling by Rod Wave. Now as for our losers, oh my god, it's one of those weeks where it encompasses nearly half the goddamn charts. So, you know what, outside of the top 10, let's instead look at the songs that didn't really move that much. It's still a lot, but it's not insurmountable. For starters, the songs with radio stability near the top, like Calm Down by Rima and Selena Gomez at 11, Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo at 12, Barbie World by Ice Spice, Nicki Minaj and Aqua at 13, Flowers by Miley Cyrus at 15, All My Life by Lil Durk and J. Cole at 16, Religiously by Bailey Zimmerman at 21, I'm still shocked it got this high, and Kill Bill by SZA at 27. Then we got country songs with more radio stability, like Standing Room Only by Tim McGraw off the debut to 62, White Horse by Chris Stapleton at 63, Angels Don't Always Have Wings by Thomas Rhett at 77, and Girl in Mine by Parmalee at 99. I'm separating these from the Zach Bryan songs that held their stability, which is kind of telling because they were not getting cannibalized by the album bomb, and that shows Dawn's with Maggie Rogers at 76 and Oklahoma Smoke Show at 88. Then we got a couple Latin songs that actually held their own, and they're a little tougher to gauge with regards to stability, like Lala by Mike Towers at 54, Lady Gaga by Peso Pluma, Gabito Ballesteros, and Junior H at 56, Un Por Ciento by Grupo Frontera and Bad Bunny at 57, and Amargura by Karol G at 90. Then there's the rest. I mean, 7 by Jungkook and Lotto's up to 28, Popular by The Weeknd, Playboi Carti, and Madonna's at 71, Oh You Wentz by Young Thug and Drake at 81, See You Again by Tyler the Creator and Kali Uchis holding on at 87, and depressingly, Summer Too Hot by Chris Brown, it's at 96 off the debut. It's stuck around. Now here's where things get a little bit more interesting, because we have no returns this week, but we did see 2 gains. Lose Control by Teddy Swims up to 82, and Good Good by Usher, Summer Walker, and 21 Savage is up to 65. Apparently the radio is really behind the latter one, even if the streaming isn't there, which honestly kind of surprises me more than it should. Usher is an established radio brand. But the big news here is, of course, Zach Bryan's album bomb, where all 16 songs hit the Hot 100. That places us in major territory. In other words, the top 20 and the best or worst. And thus with that, Oklahoman Sun at 47, Tradesman at 44, Jake's Piano Long Island at 41, Fear and Friday's Poem at 39, full song hit 24, Smaller Acts at 38, El Dorado at 31, Ticking at 29, Summertime's Close at 23, and Overtime at 22. But alright, we still have a hefty list here. Let's get it started with something I didn't quite expect. Number 98, On My Mama by Victoria Monet.
I look fly, I look good. You can't touch my bag, wish you could. I look fly, I look too good.
I'll admit I'm a little bit surprised to see Victoria Monet chart here. It's not the first time she's hit the Hot 100. There was a song with Ariana Grande back in 2019 that I thought was really forgettable, but in certain R&B circles, she's made quite a few waves. First in 2020 with Jaguar, and now this year with Jaguar 2, the album. And with the song, okay, it's a little tough to gauge because there's a lot of 2000s throwback touches with the horns and the Charlie Boy sample and the spare percussion, especially with the self-love, sexy, swaggering affirmations that remind me a lot of Sierra. But the bass line is also way more sinuous than the majority of R&B from that era, and it does give the song some tangible groove, even if there's a part of me that finds that it's a little slow overall. The larger problem, though, is that Victoria Monet, she still doesn't really impress me as a singer. Yes, she can sell this without coming across like she's trying too hard, that's a plus, but I feel like there should be a bit more magnetism or texture or charisma to carry a song that's trying to sell so much ego. I mean, I get how and why it works, it's fine enough, I guess. I feel like I should like this a lot more. Number 97, Primera Cita by Carin Leon.
A las semanas de iniciar con la aventura, se nos hizo miel la luna.
So I'm a bit surprised it took this long for Carin Leon to notch more music on the Hot 100 after his collab with Grupo Frontera. He's got a good voice and seemed to carry a little bit more maturity in his content. I was genuinely intrigued to hear this, and hell, you would not catch me saying this about a lot of regional Mexican acts. And yeah, you know what? I really like this. It's a much slower Latin country track that's got a lot more soulful timbre in the horns and the organs that if I did not know better, I could say he may have cribbed a couple notes from Chris Stapleton. And unlike a lot of peers in this lane, the mix is very warm and burnished and really professionally balanced. The song sounds great even before we get to the trading off of the brief solos. And when I translated the lyrics, I also found a decent much more to like. It's a thoughtful reflection on a first date where the forbidden chemistry feels very palpable, but where it kind of went awry along the way, and the old-fashioned romance balances out the swagger really effectively. So yeah, this is really damn good. I'd love to hear more like it on the charts. The more regional Mexican music that goes in this sort of direction, I think I'd call that a win. Just saying. Number 94, There I Go by Gucci Mane, J. Cole, and Mike Will Made It.
Yeah, it's me with the inside out tee.
Low key, only show up for a large fee.
I heard about the buzz and backlash behind this song before I even heard it, and I'm not surprised. J. Cole's a weird pairing with Gucci Mane, even with the latter getting in on his elder statesman territory, and that's a lane that still feels bizarre that we as a culture have just accepted. And for this song, you know, I'm going to come out and say this. It reminds me way too much of when Logic tried to join up with Juicy J and French Montana on that strip club song Twisted back in 2019. The energy just feels really wrong, and J. Cole sounds so out of place here. Although in this case, less for trying too hard and more for not trying at all. Now, I'm not saying that Gucci sounds that good either. It's pretty flimsy luxury rap and flexing against a basic tinkling beat that doesn't do anything interesting for Mike Will Made It. But you know what? At least Gucci Mane sounds like he fits in this sort of environment compared to J. Cole trying to sound relaxed. And instead he's got this very odd sanctimonious energy. The guy who wants to condescend to how other people party, but really does not have the moral high ground to do any of it, and also is apparently wearing his shirt inside out according to the hook, so he doesn't even look better here either, even if he says that everyone is free to party as they want. I mean, I've been suspicious that J. Cole's streak of hot verses has fallen off for a while. This confirms it. It's utterly disposable at best, pretty rough at worst. Number 80, Sittin' on Top of the World by Burna Boy.
That's the difference when you're my baby. That's how it is when you make me stop the world.
Okay, so the more I've listened to Burna Boy, the more I've found stuff that I like, but I've struggled to get into a full album outside of isolated singles. Granted, Last Last was one of my favorite hits of last year. I was at least curious about this, and it's a curveball, because it has a lot less Afrobeat texture in the percussion, more of a throwback R&B vibe with the scratching, the bass line, some of those synths, and especially that chipmunked brandy sample. Now, I do not dislike this vibe. In fact, I would actually argue the groove is really good. But Burna Boy's very relaxed delivery and the content don't really do much with it. It's a sort of hangout song where being chill is almost to the point, but it also almost tilts to having no real energy at all, where it completely slips into the background for me and leaves me wondering if I actually like this more due to nostalgia than anything all that substantial. I mean, it's okay, I guess, I'm not going to complain about it, but I generally like my hangout songs to have a bit more energy. Not bad. Not great, though. Number 37, Holy Roller by Zach Bryan featuring Sierra Ferrell.
Weekend crowd. I ain't ever been a holy roller, but I found God in your eyes.
I think some folks who saw my review of Zach Bryan's self-titled album might be a bit surprised that I'm actually talking about this one, mostly because while I consider it a really great song, it's the sort of track that could have been incredible if Sierra Ferrell was actually given a little more to do. I've never fully gotten into her sound in the indie country scene, but she is a really good singer, and just having her provide background vocals for Zach Bryan feels like a misstep. That being said, I still think the song is excellent. The hazy guitars echoing over a more expansive, borderline dream country mix with the touches of pedal steel pouring over the acoustics on the bridge. The more traditional structure that works so well with the ragged textures that kind of works for the sort of half-drunk, down-on-the-luck travelers falling in love, where if God is being found, it's in all those little moments. It's just a really damn great, very indie country sound. And yes, I'm totally a sucker for it, but damn, it's excellent. Number 20, Tourniquet by Zach Bryan.
You laughing last evening, something I dreamed of.
So a lot of folks have highlighted this as a big highlight on the self-titled album, and I'll be honest, it really wasn't for me. I mean, it's good. The piano builds to a nice bassy stomp, and the drums have a little bit more ragged, propulsive punch than you might expect. I dig the fuzz of the guitar on the second verse, and the content leaning really hard on the metaphor of the tourniquet to try to help save the bleeding out of a fellow performer who is really spiraling out of control. It works effectively. I can argue and say it does what it's trying to do. I guess if I have complaints, they're twofold. Firstly, it reminds me way too much of songs that Jason Isbell's done better just this year, and he is a primary influence. And the second is that the song just doesn't really explode the way it's set off. It feels like it runs out of gas a little early. Again, it is good. There's just better on the album. Number 19, Single Soon by Selena Gomez.
'Cause I'll be single soon. I'll be single soon. I know he'll be a mess when I break the news, but
So look, I like Calm Down a lot. It's been a really bright spot in 2023 on the Hot 100 for a really striking vibe, and yet while Selena Gomez is the artist that's probably most responsible for the American crossover, I don't really consider it her song compared to Rima, and it's not a single that really strikes a lot of attention. I don't know how much it's going to stick around. So I'll admit I was worried to see this get pushed, especially as it's not really tied to an album. It's more a throwaway that was supposed to be on Rare back in 2020, but was then discarded and then reworked for this release, and I'm sorry, why does this feel like an attempt to recreate a more understated Taylor Swift synth pop song in the vocal flourishes, but with all the production completely mishandled? I mean, all those glassy synths around the chalky percussion that grind against the very front of the mix, they do nothing to flatter that sharper groove, and while the multi-tracking is doing some work to make it feel a little bit more anthemic with the vocals, look, Selena Gomez is not a force of personality in order to sell this, especially with the somewhat capricious vibe in the lyrics, where she knows that they both had fun in the relationship, but it's time for her to be single soon. Look, she's tried this vibe before, I don't buy it, and I've said before that Selena Gomez needs production that she can fit inside of, rather than be asked to control, and this feels like it's asking for all the wrong answers. I mean, I like Selena more than most, but I still think this is pretty bad. Next, number 18, East Side of Sorrow by Zach Bryan.
Somewhere on the east side of sorrow, you better pack your bags, well, stick out your chest and then hit the road.
Now, this is more like it. The first song on the album, I'd argue, really works, with Zach Bryan thinking back on his time in the service and the loss of his mother, and when it's all really done for in the end. A question to God where the answer is, well, you gotta keep going. Even as Zach Bryan gets kind of self-referential and interrogates whether it's truly healthy to live like this, or chronicle so much of his pain in his art that he's just gotta keep on performing. And while I love the horns that fit with that military callback, or how the percussion really ramps effectively into a good crescendo with those ragged, choppy guitars, what I think I like the most is that final line on the third verse referencing the Turnpike Troubadours getting back together and to record an album that actually dropped against all odds on the same day Zach Bryan did. Proof that, hell, if they can keep the flame going in a very similar lane, Zach Bryan can too. Yes, I know. Part of the reason I like this is the indie country texture and the references, but when it works this well, I cannot complain. It's another excellent song. You should hear it. Number 17, Spotless by Zach Bryan featuring the Lumineers.
See it through. If you want spotless, I'll always lose. I don't want love, lover, I want the truth.
You know, I've actually seen the Lumineers live multiple times, and I've never been all that impressed by them. To me, they fall into that brand of pop folk that lives and dies on hooks over your writing or production or texture, and the Lumineers can get very boring very fast if they don't have those hooks, even if their ready-made accessibility has allowed them to be a very easy booking at a lot of shows. But while Spotless is fine, it's also my least favorite song on the album, mostly because it feels like Zach Bryan is playing into the Lumineers formula rather than the other way around. Zach Bryan underplays on the harmonies with Wesley Schultz. The production feels very sterile and honestly more clunky than it should be, and trying to balance out all the acoustics. I really don't like that weedy guitar flourish that's across the hook, and the writing of this messy relationship, where of course nobody's perfect, it feels both weirdly overwritten and also very sour. A first draft that just doesn't nail the tone that well. I mean, I gotta be honest, this is the sort of crossover material I was dreading that Warner would have Zach Bryan make, but given that he's also co-headlined tours with the Lumineers, this has the feel like of a one-off collab favor. Let's hopefully keep it that way. Number 14, Hey Driver by Zach Bryan featuring the Warren Treaty.
Hey driver, you can drop me off anywhere. Hey driver, you can drop me off anywhere.
Whereas this is a collab I like a lot. I really haven't had a chance to get into the Warren Treaty the way I liked. They dropped an album this year that actually got some pretty damn solid reviews on the indie country circuit for their blend of country and soul and gospel, and the fact that Zach Bryan pulled them on board for a pretty ramshackle piano and acoustic ballad, it's certainly an interesting showcase where Mike Trotter can just belt his heart out. And while I wish that Tanya Trotter was given a little bit more lead space to sing beyond her own backing vocals, there's so much to like about this shaggy, conversational lead lyrics with the driver who probably has the patience of a saint to be dealing with all these half-drunken pretensions and mess that is being showcased by these guys. And I just love that little piano touch on the final verse. It really speaks to me. And you know what, I'll say this. Zach Bryan using his newfound platform to elevate really damn talented black voices in indie country, that is a huge win. This is how a scene can grow and mature, and the song's great to boot. I feel like I really need to get around to that War and Treaty album at some point. I don't know, I think I like it. We'll have to see. Number 8, Used to Be Young by Miley Cyrus.
I know it used to be fun. You say it used to be wild. I say I used to be young.
So I've said before that outside of Flowers, it really felt like Endless Summer Vacation left little to no impact this year, especially with Jaded feeling like a very belated and underpowered radio single and Miley not really touring. Now this is from the album's reissue, and I'll admit I was intrigued to see that it was produced by Sean Everett and was touching on many of the events of Miley's, let's call it, eventful 2013, and I'll admit I'm kind of torn on it. I mean, in terms of the content, I actually think it's got some weight in Miley's pensive reflections on some of her messier party years, and now this song isn't really looking down on them. She's just moved on. They were good times, but she's just not in that same space right now, and that's fine. What I really don't like is the production on this. What it feels like 3 ideas are colliding messily with each other, from the way the way too close and compressed vocals are against the muffled pianos and acoustics that seem to be trying to build into more of a bombastic power ballad, but then we get more flattened tinkles to pair with that peeling electric guitar that has bizarrely no body or sizzle, along with some gooey synths that are drizzled over everything that seem to be another attempt to slather psychedelia over a song that really doesn't need it. I mean, I guess it would make sense for a song that is grappling with a lot of messy emotions, especially from Miley, but by the time the fireworks are going off over the utter lack of groove or potent percussion, I'm just completely underwhelmed. I mean, I get what it's doing. I understand where this is probably where Miley is right now. Shame the music's not good. I gotta say it. And finally, number 1, I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan featuring Kacey Musgraves.
Wish I didn't, but I do remember every moment on the nights with you.
I think folks will consider it an obvious cliche that, of course, this is what I think is the best song on the album. I've been cheerleading for Kacey Musgraves for 10 years, and to see her finally get to this point, even as a duet, especially as often as MCA Nashville and Music Row screwed her over, it feels like something has finally been made right. Because let's be real, even though the production is probably the most polished and refined of any song on this album, with the spare acoustics opening into a more spacious, strings-touched mix with that deeper percussion, Zach Bryan himself does not exactly sound all that great on this. Yeah, it's intentional, almost how slurred and over and messy his delivery is, but it's also no guarantee that that can work, especially juxtaposed with this sort of cleaner production. Now granted, the writing is unquestionably excellent, painting the messy picture of a relationship where it's very clear she awoke something deep in him that he was not prepared to deal with, and then the liquor got in the way for the both of them. But it is Kacey who saves this song with her endlessly expressive delivery, where she does not hold herself as blameless for falling in love with this person. Memories that, even if she wants to, she's never going to forget them. And if you know anything about Kacey Musgraves and her first husband, Rustin Kelly, even if this is not directly referencing him, there are certain points on her verse that feel very rooted in the emotional experience, especially if you heard his album this year. In short, yeah, this is incredible. It's a miracle it went to number 1. I just hope it sticks around. And yeah, obviously best of the week, but there is going to be a tie for the honorable mention. Holy Roller with Sierra Ferrell, and Primera Cita by Carin Leon. What can I say? It really impressed me. He pulled it off. Now for the worst, you know, I was going to give it to Gucci Mane, J. Cole, and Mike Will Made It for There I Go, but it's only getting dishonorable mention because it's more exasperating than outright crap. At least Gucci Mane's verse makes sense. I mean, the worst is going to Single Soon by Selena Gomez for truly awful production. Next week, I mean, I have no clue what the fallout from all this will look like. It's going to be weird, but I'm kind of excited. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.